Hello, happy people. I hope you're having an amazing day today. Today we're taking a look at George Orwell's classic novella, Animal Farm. I read Animal Farm when I was in junior high in my 8th grade literature class in the textbook, but I've never read it as an adult. So I said, hey, I want to read Animal Farm as an adult, and here's my copy of it. I'll link you to this below. It was published in 45, so I don't know if it's by its sell-by date or not. If I can find it for free online legally, I will link you to that too, so you don't have to spend the money on it. It's a fast read. It's a novella. It was published in a smaller book form at 120 pages, but this is an oversized copy and was 90. I knocked it out in 2 books over the weekend. I saw that was pretty cool. It is a lot of fun. It's fun to go back and read something that you read when you were a kid or a teenager in this case, and then go back to it and see what you remembered and what you didn't remember and that sort of a thing. And I thought that was really fun. Now, Animal Farm is, so here's one of the questions that obviously gets asked on a channel like this. You know, my channel is dedicated to fiction from science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Is Animal Farm one of those 3 genres? Well, it's not horror or fantasy, but it is science fiction. One of the subgenres of science fiction is dystopia and utopia in literature. And this is definitely a short story where a utopia turns to a dystopia very quickly. So it's definitely a science fiction subgenre in the dystopian genre. So it definitely counts as part of this channel, part of the purview of this channel. So I wanted to go back and read it for you guys, so you guys could have a fresh take for you guys. Now, obviously, this is George Orwell's Animal Farm, right? It's hard to have a new and unique take that nobody else has had in the times had this, right? And I obviously don't have this unique take that's uniquely Abish. So sorry about that. But what I can do, let's talk about what I thought of when I read this book for the first time as an adult. And when I was reading this book, rather than thinking about the Soviets and people like Trotsky, who is Snowball according to Wikipedia, and Napoleon is Stalin, and seeing these sorts of things in there, and seeing the first guy's probably Lenin, the first pig who presents the vision that everybody follows is supposed to be Lenin. And reading all these sorts of things in these reviews and on Wikipedia since then, and where the inspiration comes from, rather than seeing that, what I saw was the Cuban Revolution. To me, Snowball sort of represented Che Guevara, and Castro was represented by Napoleon, the leader and the more military of the two. And so I can end that dichotomy. And so that's what I saw when I was reading it. Now, that's probably my U.S. bias, because as somebody who's, growing up in the U.S., right, I'm obviously going to be somebody who is closer to Cuba than I am to the actual proper UK. Also, Cuba's a lot closer to when I was born in 76 than the Soviet Revolution, which had already happened decades before George Orwell was writing this in the 40s. So that's what I was thinking about. Now, when I went and did research and saw all the sort of analogies and allegories to Soviet Russia, yeah, I can see it. But that was what I was thinking of when I was reading it. And I was like, I don't think this is that old. I thought this was a lot earlier than the Cuban. So why am I seeing Cuba in this thing? Which also shows to see how timeless, this sort of a take is. Now, obviously, this is a take about communism, right? And the fall of communism, the rise and fall of communism, right? I do like that's happening here. Now, George Orwell himself really didn't like the pro-Soviet Russia, Soviet Union stuff that was happening domestically in the UK during the World War II. He really didn't like it. In fact, he actually quit the BBC where he was working for because of how pro-Soviet it was, and they published a document for their staff about ways to deal with issues that were raised because of how badly some of the things were, and they said, oh, the Red Menace and the Red Scare and all those sorts of purges and so forth, oh, it's just creations by Germany, right, and our Nazi things. Our friends certainly wouldn't be that bad, right? This is Uncle Joe. And obviously we care about our allies, right? And that was, I think, particularly naive, even at the time, right? And so I applaud George Orwell for quitting the BBC and saying, this is not who I am as a person, and this is not who we should be as a nation. We shouldn't just say, oh, well, he's our ally in a war where both of us have been attacked by Nazis. But so that's okay. And so we need to work together to defeat them, but at the same time still hold them accountable for massive human rights violations and killing and purging massive numbers of people, right? Millions and millions of people died to the Stalinist purges, arguably a lot more than died in the concentration camps and genocides and so forth that were happening at the hands of the Nazis, right? So credit to Orwell for seeing that and resigning from the BBC because of that. Also, this book was hard to publish for an admittedly established writer because of how anti-communist it actually is, and particularly anti-Stalinist. Lots of publishers waived it. One publisher said, sure, I'll publish it, and then they ran it by a minister from the government, and they said, no thanks. After that minister stepped in and said, I don't think you should publish this. There was a lot of self-censoring of anti-Stalinist and anti-communist, anti-Soviet Russia sentiment during this time in the UK. In fact, the prelude to this novel actually talks about that and how difficult it was for Orwell to get this published. And I never read that in the prelude because the prelude was never a part of this, right? Prelude wasn't a part of this when I was growing up, and I read this as a part of my literature class. It's not a part of the novel now that I bought recently as an adult on an Amazon link either. But so in fact, this prelude has rarely been published, and one of his critiques is that not only was this hard to get published, but it shouldn't have been, because we as the UK self-censored a lot of this stuff, even contemporarily, and we shouldn't have been doing so, right? We're supposed to have freedom of speech and freedom of press, and that you would think would allow us to criticize one of our allies for some nasty stuff he was doing while being one of our allies. And obviously, but that didn't happen. And this self-censorship that happened by the British shouldn't have been allowed to have occurred. So I think that's pretty cool. And again, Orwell's a pretty cool guy for this novella. Now, this is 90 pages long. I knocked out 45 pages each day, which were an hour and 10 minutes each time. So it was about 2 hours and 20 minutes all told, which I read in 2 days. Normally I dedicate an hour to reading, but I decided to knock out additional. And I thought about just doing it like in 30-page chunks and just doing it in 3 days, but then I was like, no, we'll just do it all in, just 2 days instead. I stayed late. It's never boring. He's a solid writer. This is a classic genre story. It got some pushback when it was published. A lot of people just didn't like the fable aspects, the story, the animals, and those sorts of things. Didn't like it a lot. So this was not universally received as this really strong work that became this classic in the genre, but it's now a classic in the genre today. And we're going to be giving it a 10 out of 10 because it's Animal Farm by George Orwell. It's probably more like a 9.5 or a 9.6 out of 10 when I think about it, but we're going to be rounding it up to a 10 out of 10 proper, which I reserve for classics of fiction. And there are people that have classics that I don't even give a 10 to. That's okay. That's how things work in our lives. I'm going to be giving this a 10 out of 10 for you because it's Animal Farm. It's one of the 100 greatest novels of all time, according to numbers of lists. It's one of the most influential novels of all time, according to many lists. Right during the Cold War, people like the U.S. would print this in local languages and then launch it with balloons on behind enemy lines in places like Poland, and there was a translation into Ukraine in the 40s. So this is a key tool of propaganda by the West for these. This is a huge piece of literature, so I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. But maybe you differ. So let me know. Have you read Animal Farm? Who hasn't read Animal Farm, right? What did you think of it? Would you like to talk about some of the plot? I didn't do a whole lot of plot because pretty much everybody's read it, so why am I going to take your time with like plot rate on the novella. What did you think of it? Did you think it was better than a 10 out of 10? Like an 11 out of 10, which is not mathematically possible? Or did you think it was worse? Maybe an 8 or a 9 or a 5? Is there something you want to talk about? Some interesting concept or takeaway that you have, or that you took away from this story while you were reading it? Did you see Cuba, or did you see the things that were supposed to be seen in Soviet Russia? I would be more than happy to talk with you further about it, whatever your take is, in the comments below. If you like this video, why not hit that subscribe button, because there's going to be a lot more of these to follow. And then finally, hey, I want to thank you so very much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video, because we all have so many things that are happening in our lives and we get pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. Thanks again, and have an amazing day.